Wildfire, talk about the song meaning. I was listening to the lyrics, absolutely beautiful lyrics. What do they mean to you?
For me, and I guess I'll start here with the music video. If you saw in the music video, we kind of experienced at the beginning, myself dealing with something traumatic or stressful, distressing, and I dropped my phone. And the reason why we started with that was because we wanted the wildfire metaphor to build throughout the video, and in the same way that it builds throughout the song, which is when you're going through the darkest of times or when the worst thing could possibly happen, it's that wildfire in your heart that gets you through it until the end, that you can find peace and respite and resolution. And I think that was just a metaphor for the song in its entirety, which is, there's a wildfire in us all, and that wildfire drives our decision making. It helps us, deal with whatever it is we're dealing with. And, you could call that God if you wanted to, but I think that's the general theme of wildfires, just that light inside us all that lights up the world when it's at its darkest.
Awesome. Well, this is for the Christian Post, so people are definitely gonna
Yeah,
associate it with God. I'd love
I
to
hope
kind of
you.
hear, yeah, I'd love to hear your own testimony. I know you were in A Week Away, which we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I'd love to kind of hear your own faith journey for our audience.
Yeah, I think I might have spoken a little bit about it during press for A Week Away, but just to rehash anyone's memory, I had quite an interesting faith journey. So, I grew up going to church, and I grew up praying, even from a young age. I remember praying every night when I didn't even really know what I was doing. So maybe that was God,
Wow.
wanting me to speak to him when I didn't even realize I was speaking to him.
Yeah.
But then some stuff happened as I got older, stuff that any, average adult deals with eventually, whether it's, death and grief,
Yeah.
hardship, health issues. And at a certain point in my late teens, early 20s, it got so bad for me that I kind of just shunned the idea of God altogether, because I was like, if God does exist and God loves me, then why is he making my world a living hell? And it felt that way. And I'm sorry if that's like a graphic depiction of what I was going through, but it really felt that way.
Yeah.
I was so lost in every sense of the word. But then there were a few events that happened, I guess you could say, according to God's plan, that kind of lifted me out of that darkness. And I started to, see the light again, and find enjoyment and just peace in my life, and resolution with some of the things that I was dealing with.
Yeah.
And the more I settled into that, the more I got to know God, and the more I realized he was always trying to help me. It's just some things have to happen for a reason. And now in retrospect, at 24 years old, I can look back at those years and say, wow, okay, it really did have to happen for that reason. And now my relationship with God is stronger than ever. I talk to him every day. I'm constantly praying, and it's just interesting seeing the juxtaposition of that in my life from, not even 4 years ago, when I didn't even care to talk to God. And now 4 years, it's like, he's one of my strongest relationships.
That's beautiful. Well, and thanks for sharing. I think it's human for us to go through what you've been through. Maybe people don't share it as honestly, but it's great that you did. Something you said actually, reminds me of one of the lines in the song. Even if I'm broken, I'll still keep my hope in the one that holds me close. This has been a broken season for a lot of people. Coming out of 2020 was just awful for so many people, and there's just been a lot of brokenness, a lot of darkness. Talk about keeping your hope in God, or in that relationship to help you.
I gotta be honest. I don't know what God's plan is with,
Right.
and no one does with this pandemic, and the fact that it's still, I mean, I had COVID, it was terrible, it was miserable. but like I was one of the lucky ones, and luckily I recovered. But there were a lot of people who didn't. And I keep thinking, like, it makes me sad to think about. But it's like every number and statistic that we've seen on these, COVID case graphs is a real living person.
Right.
And I've had a tough time dealing with that. I kind of like shoved it under the rug for a long time. But it's just another one of those human calamities that for whatever reason has happened. You could argue 9/11 was something similar. We lost a lot of, Americans.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it's like that's what is happening right now. And of course, I question God. Of course, I wonder, like everyone else, what is your plan with this?
Yeah.
'Cause this is terrible. But again, it's just like I settle into my faith. I find resolution in that everything happens for a reason, and maybe this will prevent us from ever having to deal with a pandemic of this level again, because there's going to be more viruses, and this is a human world. It's Earth. It's a
Yeah.
biological world. Viruses exist, and maybe a silver lining could be that we've learned so much that come the next virus we won't have a pandemic of this kind.
Yeah.
But again, that's just me speculating. I don't know what God's plan is. No one does, but I can't lie that it's been really difficult, and as an artist, I'm quite emotional at times, and I know what it's like to deal with grief, and I know there's a lot of families who are dealing with that during this time. And if anything, my heart just goes out to them, and I ask that they pray. I'll pray for them,
Talk about the importance of hope, though, like holding on to hope in despair. We don't know
Yeah,
God's plan, but because your outlook is still pretty positive. It could be, yes, this sucks. We all feel that way, but and
right.
you could have a different outlook, but you're still holding on to the hope and light.
Yeah, I think the reason why I still even have hope is because I have trust. I
Mhm.
trust my relationship with God, and I trust Him. And a relationship doesn't work without trust and respect, right?
Right.
So that alone, my trust in the greater well-being and the greater good and the greater plan is enough for me to continue hoping. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. Talk about the music. I know I was talking to your PR person before we jumped on here, but I know you're on CMG, which is the Christian division of Capital, but your music is definitely geared more towards the pop side. So what can we kind of expect? I know I'm assuming it's going to be inspirational, but also appealing to a mass audience.
Yeah, it's going to be both. I mean, the idea of the project was a Christian crossover, and it's been done before.
Of course,
Um,
yeah.
but I think, for me, I felt an obligation to give the CCM community music that they could listen to,
Mm.
music that was uplifting, music that was inspiring, that was hopeful, that was clean. Especially after the response at Winter Jam 2020,
Mm.
when I was on that tour. I mean, with 20,000 fans in an arena, I just kept thinking to myself, once this next artist project comes into play, it would be a really big shame if I didn't give them something they could listen to. And
Mm.
especially because I love Jesus, like what a blessing that I even get to make music about Jesus according to God's plan. Like that's awesome.
Right.
But at the same time, I have a lot of, mainstream role models just, living in LA and coming out here for kind of the mainstream TV and film side, and
Yeah.
growing up in Chicago, kind of big city. So I grew to love a lot of artists that kind of fell into that category. Justin Timberlake, John Legend, I'm a big fan of, Ed Sheeran. So, I felt like I wanted to make that kind of music, but I wanted to also keep it relevant to these uplifting themes that would work for the CCM community. And in that way, it is a true crossover. And I hope that if you are looking for the inspirational themes and the Christian themes, you'll find them. If you aren't looking for them, you can still enjoy good pop music,
Yeah.
good radio pop. But I hope people do find that, that line in the middle, because I want them to experience both, if anything.
Yeah. And your single is great. Honestly, it's pop and it's inspiring. So you definitely did that with this. So I'm excited for the rest of the record. Talk a little
Thanks.
bit about the success part of it. You know, you've been in the industry for a while, and you know, coming with a message that you have, it's easier to kind of just say whatever you want and go with the what the mainstream is predominantly doing. So it's harder for you to have a standard like what you're saying right now. Talk about that and just like all the success that you've had and still maintaining the standard. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And the standard, you know, it's just because it's pop music. I've never thought it was mutually exclusive, that because it couldn't be straight ahead pop music, that it couldn't be inspirational, or because it was, you know, CCM and inspirational, that it couldn't be straight ahead pop. You know, they weren't ever mutually exclusive to me. But as far as like the success aspect, yes, I've been in the business for a minute, but I kind of just keep finding myself in the place that I'm in. And I'm never really believing that I am where I am. And I don't ever think that I've made it. You know, I mean, I very much live a normal life. You know, I have an apartment and a home here in LA, and you know, I just make music for the fun of it and because I enjoy it. You know, it's the same thing I've been doing since I was a kid. I would sing around the house, you know. So it started out as a hobby and it kind of became a career. But it's never felt like a career in that way. You know, of course I work hard at it. Of course I'm looking for my next gig. Of course I'm always doing my best to push myself to the limits of my craft, you know. But at the end of the day, I just feel like a really lucky guy who fell into it and keeps falling deeper into it.
Mm.
And it was at the right place at the right time.
Well, it keeps you humble, that's for sure. I love that. Talk about some of the feedback that you got from being in a week away. Like, were there anything that kind of you took from being a part of that project that really kind of touched you?
Just the memories.
Yeah.
That was a really special project for me. And I can tell you, I did not expect it to be that way going into it. That cast was just amazing. You know, I mean, just being able to spend time with them and the bond that we all have, I didn't see that coming. I certainly didn't expect the bond. You know, it's kind of like you show up at work and then you leave set and you leave those relationships until the next day when you see each other again on set. But with
Right.
us, it kind of came offset. And I love that. You know, that's so rare. And for people who aren't actors or, you know, it's just it's rare to find that in this industry. So that was a big bonus, is just enjoying the people that I'm working with. And on top of that, getting to do a musical. You know, that was something I kind of had on my bucket list. I wasn't sure if it would ever happen, but it happened. And I loved every minute of it. And just the creative growth that, you know, I personally experienced, and working with Roman White, who such a seasoned, you know, commercial video director, whether it's movies and film or music videos. The working relationship there was just really amazing. Like, we just threw ideas off of each other, and I enjoyed every second of a week away.
That's awesome. So this will be my last question, and feel free if you have anything else you want to add with us. That's perfectly fine. But you have a ton of followers, you know, online. And just as your success continues, I'm sure that'll continue to grow. What are you hoping to leave? Like, you know, you're an influencer, whether you want to be or not, right? Whether you planned it really or not, you are one. So what are you hoping to kind of leave with those that follow you?
I think it's kind of what I'm already leaving. And maybe it was just coming from the background of Disney Channel for 2 or 3 years time, that I kind of found myself in the role of a role model.
Mhm.
And I can tell you, a lot of my peers who I worked with on that show, or just in that Disney community in general, would likely consider themselves to be role models as well. And I think Disney does a really good job of, you know, training us to be role models and representatives of what it looks like to be good, to be kind, to work hard. So if anything, I just hope that I leave with them enough influence as an influencer to make good decisions, to find happiness, to stay healthy. Because I know what it's like to be unhappy. I know what it's like to be unhealthy. And
Yeah.
I just hope that this music, or, even a photo that I post on Instagram, can just bring them a little bit of joy. And at the end of the day, like, I'm an influencer only because my fans make me. I'd be nothing without my fans, just like every other artist. So
Mm,
I hope they can take that away from it, and positivity.
that's awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Uh, just that I'm excited for them to hear this music. I'm always grateful that they tune in and listen, and I really do love them. Like, I yeah, they're amazing, and I'm excited to get back out on the road and meet them in person again, because that was the other thing that was so special about Winter Jam, is just being able to put faces to the fans. So yeah.
And Winter Jam is like one of the most incredible, like family oriented concerts that I've been to behind the scenes and, in the audience. So that's awesome. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much. We can't wait to see you on the road. I can't wait to hear the rest of your album.
Thanks so much, Jeannie. I really appreciate you taking the time here.